Hello everybody. Good afternoon to us all. Welcome to Olga channel. My name is Cindy, and today we are going to also look at another aspect of arbitrage. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video, and encourage others to also watch. So in my previous video, I looked at the two forms of arbitrage, right? The locational arbitrage and then triangular arbitrage, where the locational arbitrage focused on the fact that there should be two banks, right, involved in this transaction where there's only one currency involved. That's you're looking at the differences in prices for one currency at two different locations. Okay, so for it to be possible, one bank's buying price, that is the bid price, should be higher than another bank's ask price, that is the selling price, so that you can buy from the bank with the lowest ask price and then sell to the bank with the highest bid price to be able to take advantage of the arbitrage. And we said that prices will realign, right, when there will be an increase in the demand for the currency at the bank where there was the lowest ask rate, and this will force the rate to increase. At the same time, there will be an increase in the supply of the currency at the bank where there was highest bid, and then this will eventually cause the bid rate to fall. Whilst all these forces come together to reach a point where the both banks will have what's like fairly equal rates such that you'll not be able to make what profit if you engage in the arbitrage. We also look at the triangular arbitrage, right, which looked at three different currencies which are involved, where one currency is the common one amongst the three. And we looked at the fact that when there are differences in the cross exchange rates, that's the actual cross exchange rate, which is the same as the spot cross exchange rate, and the appropriate cross exchange, which is calculated from the formula, right? So if there are discrepancies in the cross exchange rate, then it means triangular arbitrage can occur, right? And then we saw the formula, right? We can use the division one or the multiplication one depending on how the currencies come, right? Depending on the quotation, whether they are direct, indirect, that will help you know how to do this. But this is basically you looking at like a normal multiplication, right, issue or division issue, right? Then you'll be able to know how to decide on whether to buy first or sell first depending on where the profit is coming. Okay, so when you check and then the appropriate cross exchange rate is quite maybe lower than the spot exchange rate, right, you can decide to um, get the currency involved in that rate and then sell, so I'll be able to get more of the other currency. So it depends. So you have to know which one is higher, which one is lower, and then determine whether when you buy or you sell, which one will help you get a profit, right, before you move on to do the arbitrage. And today we are looking at the third aspect of arbitrage, which is what the covered interest rate arbitrage, right? And this one just looks at two aspects. We have covered and we have interest rate. So the interest rate arbitrage means you are taking advantage of differences in interest rate between two countries, right? And the covered here just means that you hedging your exchange rate position using a forward contract. So let's dive right in and enjoy. Don't forget to like and share also, and subscribe if you haven't. So sorry. So the definition for covered interest rate arbitrage, it is the process of capitalizing on what interest rate differential between two countries while covering for exchange rate risks. So like I said, you've spotted that two different countries, right, probably your home country and another country, there's a difference in what their interest rate, and then you want to leverage or capitalize on that. But then not forget that there's a factor of exchange rate risks in the future, because exchange rate might change, so you want to cover that with a forward contract, right, where the forward contract helps you to lock exchange rate today, so that in the future when there are changes in the exchange rate, right, you'll be able to protect yourself, okay, depending on your expectation. All right, so the steps in doing this covered arbitrage, I just made it simple. Doesn't mean all these steps, but then just so that you understand, right, when you see a question and it looks so bulky. So first you determine the amount you are investing, okay. So if maybe you are investing 1,000, fine, but then there can be a situation where you might not have the money, you have to go and borrow from your home country to do that. So you can borrow from your home country, say you can borrow 1,000 cedi from a bank in your home country, But don't forget that at the end of the entire transaction, you have to factor, to determine your real profits, you have to factor in the interest rate you paid on the loan you are taking today. So you have to also take into consideration. If you take a loan in your home country today to enter into the transaction, you pay interest rate on it at the end of the transaction. But when you are starting with the amount you went for. But if you are calculating your profits at the end of the transaction, don't forget that there's an interest rate factor you have to pay to your home country. But in this case, let's assume that you have your own money and you're investing. So you determine the amount you're investing and determine the country with the highest interest rate. Is it your country? It's usually the foreign country, because if your country's rate is higher, you wouldn't want to go and um, invest in other countries or rate which is lower than your own. Probably the return might become low, but there can be cases where if you can engage in this arbitrage and you make profits, why not? But rarely would you find your own home country being higher than another country and you engaging in the arbitrage. Okay, so usually the foreign country has the highest interest rate than your home country, so you try to see if you can leverage on that differences and then make risk-free profits. Then the third, you convert the investment amount from the home currency to the foreign currency using the spot exchange rate. So you have 1,000 cedis, you want to go and invest, right? Before if you are going to invest 1,000 cedi, maybe you have you are in Ghana, you have 1,000 cedis, you want to go and invest in maybe Canada. You can't go and put out the cedis in Canada's bank. You have to change it, right? And since you are going to invest now, you have to use the rate that is working now. That's why I'm saying the spot rate, okay? So you go and change the money that you have now using the spot rate to Canadian dollars, and then you go invest in Canada, right? So you convert the investment amount from your home currency to the foreign currency using the spot rate that is working at the point in time. Then the next step, you invest in the foreign currency. You're going to put your money in the foreign country's bank, or maybe anywhere you want to asset or something you want to invest, you invest, right? Then if you invest, you have to now think about it. Okay, if I invest, it means that in the future, at the end of the period that under study, I'll have to go for my money, right? If I wait for money, I have to bring it back to Ghana cedis. But don't forget there's exchange rate factor, and it might change depending on your expectations. Okay, so you might want to hedge yourself or protect yourself using a forward was contract. But to know the amount you are using or the units that's supposed to be in the forward contract, it will determine on the amount you expect to receive at the end of the period. So you have to determine the amount you expect to receive at the end of the period to know the kind of forward that you need to involve in the forward contract today. Okay, so you determine the end value of your investment, that's the future value, using the future value formula. Then after that, you can enter into a forward contract, right? So let's say that Ghana cedis, you've invested in Canada, exchange rate might change. So you enter into a forward contract so that in the future you will sell the Canadian dollar that you'll be getting to get what cedis. Okay, so you enter into a forward contract, and the units or the amount involved will be the Canadian dollars, right? The amounts that you have, and then the forward contract is to sell that Canadian dollars to the other party in the contract, right? So that you get the money, the value in your currency. So you enter into a forward contract, and then there will be an agreed rate, and that will be the forward rate. Okay, all right. Then after that, you calculate the amount that you receive in the foreign currency at the end of the period, right? Then you change that to the forward. So let's say you receive 1,000 Canadian dollars at the end of the period. You have to change that back into the so let's say after 1 year, we are in 1 year. So now we have moved from today to 1 year. After 1 year, we received 1,000. Now we need it in cedis. So we're going to use the forward rate that we had locked the currency to change it, because you are selling to the other party in the contract and you are selling to the person at the forward rate. Then you'll be able to get the money in currency. Now if you want to get your yield, it's just percentage work, right? It's just percentage formula where you find your percentage how do I put it, your new amount that you have. So when in 1 year's time, the money you get in Ghana cedis, right, after exchanging it or changing to Ghana cedis, then you subtract what you invested today, and then you divide by 100, right, and then you get your value. But in case you borrowed today to do that investment, your total cost will not only be the 1,000 cedi you borrowed today, right? To be the 1,000 cedis, and then you grow it by the interest rate that you are paying on it. Then that will become the entire cost that you incurred. so that you'll be able to get the real profits that you have to have. But in this case, we are assuming that you have your own money, so there will be no interest rate you are paying. So the yield will just be the amount you are getting today in your Ghana cedis after conversion minus the amount invested today in Ghana cedis divided by the amount invested today in Ghana cedis times 100. So just percentage formula work. So if the yield right is greater than the interest rate in the domestic country, then covered interest rate arbitrage was successful. But if the yield is less, it means that you are going to make a loss if you indeed enter into that kind of arbitrage, and you don't want any risky profits, right? Why else you can invest in your own country and be safe. So let's see a question. So we have the spot rate of Canadian dollars to be 0.7. The 90-day forward rate of Canadian dollar is 0.692. The 90-day Canadian interest rate 4%, and 90-day US interest rate 2.5%. So let's note something here. The question didn't say that the Canadian interest rate is annual. Okay, it said we are looking at a 90-day forward rate. So it means after 90 days we are going to what? And we are going to determine whether we made a profit or not. And the interest rate involved is for 90 days. It's not a 1 year. So you don't have to find the effective interest rate to factor in 90 days. The interest rate for only 90 days. So you don't need to be dividing things and multiplying things in days, and no, because the transaction is going to end on 90 days, right? And then the interest rate they give is also 90 days. So there is no need to convert. If you say the transaction is going to end in 90 days and the interest rate they gave you is a 1 year interest rate, then that's when you can be dividing things and then find the effective interest rate to give. But in this case, the rate is for the 90 days that we are entering into the contract or we are engaging this transaction. So we don't need to find any effective interest rate or divide things by days. Okay, then given this information, what would be the yield to the US investor who use the covered interest rate? So assuming the investor invests $1 million, right? And then they are saying what market forces would occur to eliminate any further possibilities of covered interest rates. Now let's dive in. So the amounts, so looking at the steps we took, so the amount you are investing is what? $1 million, right? The country with the highest interest rate is Canada, right? And then the rate is for 90 days. So the rate is not 1 year, 90 days. The rate is for 90 days. And then the forward, so the ending period for the capitalizing on the arbitrage is also 90 days. So we don't need to divide the interest rate whatsoever. So the interest rate, the country with the highest interest rate is Canada, and it's 4%, because US is 2.5% or so. So now you convert your $1 million to an amount in Canadian dollars, because you're going to invest in Canada. You can't put US dollar in Canadian bank. You have to put a Canadian dollar in a Canadian bank, right? So we have to change the 1 million USD to Canadian dollars using the spot rate, because we are doing it now. So spot rate is the rate now. All right, so the spot rate is $0.7 is to 1 Canadian dollar. So $1 million will give us what? So after doing your calculation, you arrive at this. So this will be the Canadian dollars that we are going to receive if you convert. So this is the Canadian dollars we are going to invest now. So we invest this Canadian dollars in a Canadian bank. All right, we'll deposit it, and then our interest rate that we'll be getting at the end of the period is 4%. So at the end of 90 days is the 4%, because the 4% is a 90 days rate, not a 1 year rate. So you don't need to convert. All right, so you calculate the future value of the invested amount. So after 90 days, how much are you going to get? After using the future value formula, which is here, at the end of the day, you are going to get this amount. So at the end of the 90-day period, you are going to get approximately 1.48 million Canadian dollars at the end of the 90 days. Now you have to hedge, because after 90 days you have to exchange the Canadian dollars to your US dollars to be able to determine the profit you made or not, because you invested US dollars upfront from your country. So you need to know. Okay, so at the end of the 90-day period, we got Canadian dollars, but you're not in Canada, we are in US. So you have to convert it back to be able to benefit from the amount we got. And then we have to convert it back to today's time. We have to use the forward rate, right? Because as you said earlier, you enter into a forward contract, so that at the end of the 90 days, you're able to sell that Canadian dollars to someone else at the forward rate and get USD. So so that if there's any exchange rate risks based on your speculation, you'll be what's covered. That's what a covered rate means. All right, so we do that at the forward rate. Then 90 days later, after receiving the future value, you want to convert to what dollars. So to get the equivalent of this Canadian dollars in USD, we use the forward rate. Okay, so we use the forward rate. We use the forward rate to calculate the amount that we'll be getting if you like today after the 90 days. So this 1.48 million Canadian dollars is equivalent to what 1.028 US million USD, approximately that. So it means that when you after 90 days, right, in your home currency, you'll be getting approximately 1.028 what million USD. All right. Then the profit is what the end value that you got at the end of the period in your home currency because you're in the US minus the initial amount invested, which is what's your home currency. So we have this amount substitution minus the 1 million USD. So USD also 1 million USD, right? So at the end of the day, we'll be getting a profit of $28,104.29, right? Then to find the yield is your profit, right, divided by your initial investment times 100. Suppose you didn't find profit first. To find your yield, it will be your what? Your end value minus your initial value divided by the initial value times 100. By the end of the day, your yield is going to be 2.81%. And then the yield we see from investing in the foreign country and hedging exchange rates with a forward contract is greater than investing in your home currency, that's in US, which you would have received 2.5%. So it means the covered interest rate was what? Successful. So how do we realign or eliminate any further possibility of covered interest rate? So market forces work together to do this. How does this happen? So at the spot, so the first, there will be an increase in the demand for the Canadian dollars at spot or present, because people have seen that there's arbitrage in the market, right, between interest rates. So they want to use covered interest rates. So more people want to get the Canadian dollars and invest in a Canadian country or in Canada, right? So there will be more demand for the Canadian dollars, and the value of the Canadian dollars will rise relative to the dollar. So hence the spot rate is going to rise. And secondly, there will be an increase in the supply of forward contracts, not foreign contracts. It's forward contract is forward, not foreign. So forward contract. So there will be an increase in forward contract to sell Canadian dollars at the expiration rate, at the expiration date at the forward rate. So since people want to hedge themselves against exchange rate risks after at the end of the period, okay, they will enter into a forward contract, so to sell the Canadian dollar. So as more people are entering into the contract to sell and sell, there will be more supply of us Canadian dollars, and this will what reduce the value or decrease the value of the Canadian dollars, right, relative to the dollar, because there will be more supply of what the Canadian dollars than demanded. So at the end of the day, the forward rate is going to fall. And we should not forget that the interest rate in the foreign country might fall because of what? Increase in capital inflows in Canada. So as more people are changing their monies into Canadian dollars and putting it in Canada, more people are putting money in Canada, and the supply of money in Canada increases, the interest rate is going to fall. So this will cause the interest rate in the Canada to fall. The same way as people are changing their monies from dollars to Canadian dollars and moving money outside the country, means that there will be shortage of money in the US. So money supply is going to decrease, and at the end of the day, it will cause the interest rate to fall. The interest rate to rise, because if there's shortage, it means when people start demanding more of the US dollars or money in the system, they will not find it, right? It will be difficult. They have to pay more to get money. So the interest rate in the US will rise. So as all these are working together, right, this is rising, this is falling, all that, reach a point where the difference between the spot rate and then the forward rate, right, will offset what the interest rate differential between Canada and the US. So the difference between the spot rate and the forward rate. Okay, the difference, that whether it will be a premium or a discount, depends. That discount or premium will offset the interest rate advantage that you are getting between Canada and the US, right? So that's the covered arbitrage won't be possible. So any further arbitrage would lead to what? Losses. And the equilibrium achieved here is what we term as interest rate was parity. The equilibrium achieved here is what we term as what? Interest rate parity. Interest rate parity is the equilibrium achieved when there was there's no possibility for what? Covered interest rate, such that the interest rate differential, right, between two countries what is offset by what? The difference between the spot rate and then the forward rate. So there's more on the interest rate parity, right? So with the interest rate parity, you can it says that the rate of return that you are getting from engaging in a covered interest rate, right, must be equal to the interest rate you are getting in your home country. And that happens, it means that there's a equilibrium has been what? Achieved. At the end of the day, any further covered interest rate arbitrage would be what? Risky. All right. Any further